can you say something for me?
Hello, hello, hello.
Good, I've got you. And Deirdre.
Hello, and I am so happy to be here.
Excellent. I've got you both registering on Zencaster. So here we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 20. I'm thinking Circle of Fellows, which is a different show I do for IABC Fellows, and we're about to do episode 26. Just start that again.
You have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Way too much. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 107 of For Immediate Release. This is Shell Holtz in Concord, California, and I have a couple of really outstanding guest co-hosts with me today. One is a veteran of the show, Deirdre Breckenridge. How are you, Deirdre? Good to see you.
I'm doing really well. Good to see you, and thanks for inviting me to be on the show.
It's always a stimulating show when you're on. Some great conversation. For those who don't know Deirdre, she is CEO of Peer Performance Communications. She's written 6 business books. She speaks internationally on PR, marketing, branding, social media, an adjunct professor, an online professor, a podcaster, a blogger, and a video instructor on LinkedIn. And in part of your life, you're still able to find time for family and things like that.
Yes. Yes, I am, thankfully.
That's good. And we have a first-time guest co-host, and it was somebody that you recommended, Deirdre, and I'm so glad, Elizabeth, that you were able to join us. Elizabeth Sosno, how are you?
Fine. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. You are marketing partner at Bliss Integrated Communication. So since this is the first time listeners are hearing about Bliss, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. We're a 50-person agency headquartered in New York, and our focus is professional services, financial services, and healthcare. So essentially, most of our time is spent figuring out how to kind of transform complex ideas into actionable marketing.
In a highly regulated couple of industries as well.
Indeed.
And it says here that you oversee integrated marketing strategy and execution for the agency. You're also chair of digital marketing for WorldCom's global board of directors. And your writing has appeared in Convince and Convert, PR Daily, the Content Marketing Institute, and many other places. And I see that you have been with Bliss since 1998. That's a long stint with one company.
Yeah, I got lucky and sort of did every job along the way and eventually got to buy the company with another partner. So I tried on a lot of hats. I should say, by the way, for WorldCom, I'm past chair now, but obviously still closely involved in the organization.
Outstanding. And you started as a media trainer, if I read your LinkedIn profile correctly.
Well, first I started with pitching, right? You can't be a very good media trainer without doing a lot of media pitching. But yes, I still do media training all the time, 6 people last week. It's a fun way for me to get to use everything that I know professionally, plus a little of my theater background, because I did a lot of theater in school. So there is a performance part of media training that's important.
Well, without any question. And Deirdre, you've recommended that we bring Elizabeth onto the show. How do you know each other?
So I've known Bliss for a while, and I actually met Elizabeth through another colleague, Nathan Burgess. So that's how we initially met. And then Elizabeth came and interviewed on the NASDAQ PR Influencer Series. She came to MarketSite in New York, and we had this awesome conversation. So our worlds have kind of been colliding, and I thought, wow, she'd be great on FIR.
Excellent. Well, we'll find out starting
Ooh,
now. That's right. Pressure on a PR podcast. I think not. But let's start with our first story that all 3 of us had listed on the rundown as something we wanted to talk about, and that's Twitter expanding to 280 characters. This is initially going out to a small group of users, although I've seen probably a dozen pieces explaining how you can get around it and use the 280 characters if you want to. If you're not part of the group, it's been introduced to. Yeah, the original 140 character limit was arbitrary. Jack Dorsey said it was based on the 160 character limit in SMS texting. And the reason for this change is that people using the Roman characters, English, French, Spanish, weren't able to get as much content across in that character limitation as people using Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, where a single character can convey an entire concept. And evidently, they're not getting the 280 character expansion. They'll still be limited to 140. But do you think this is going to make a difference for marketers and communicators using Twitter? Is it going to help Twitter?
Well, I always say it depends on your community. So apparently Twitter says that they've been listening. They do have a really strong culture. I think there's a base that wants that 140 characters. And, Elizabeth, maybe you can attest to this as a PR professional and a marketer. We want to be pithy. We want to be concise and get our messages across. But this isn't something that's new because it's been tested. They've been listening and they've been making changes. So you've probably noticed DMs are longer. And I've certainly taken advantage of that. There's quotable tweets. The @replies are no longer counted as characters. When you embed an image, those aren't a part of your character limit as well. So yes, they are listening, but we can challenge each other to talk about what are the drawbacks and what do we have to be careful of if we're expanding the ability to talk more and say less, to be spammy, or how are they going to regulate this? So those are some of the things that come to my mind as a PR professional. I would rather keep it shorter. But, as a marketer, if you need longer to get your point across, then that might work too. Responsibly, of course.
Responsibly, yes.
I don't know if it's going to fix the problem, which is Twitter's flat growth. But I think before we diagnose how Twitter might actually improve and change who it is, you do have to think about this action and this decision. So Jack Dorsey said not so long ago that the 140 characters was a beautiful constraint. And I think he meant that there is an opportunity to be, yes, pithy, but also to distill an idea, which to me is at the core of being a good communicator. Can you take an idea and reduce it to an elegant, galvanizing call to action? And that, at its best, is what Twitter can do. So do more characters help that? I'm not so sure. And it did seem to me that there were a large number of protests last week. We got the predictable headline of Twitter broke the internet, which happens anytime, you have a social media crowd who's annoyed about something. So there were brands that were experimenting, if you have Charmin looking for a chance to talk more about tweeting from the seat to use their hashtag, I guess that's okay. But I don't think the general Twitterverse was thrilled about the opportunity. And I think the real reason is that doesn't fix some of Twitter's core problems, in my estimation.
Yeah, I found the initial barrage of 280 character tweets from brands to be very redundant. You had the Chicago Bears go, duh, Bears, with 200 A's. You had TGI Fridays going, Long Island iced tea. You had Burger King going fries, 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 fries for 280 characters. Durex Condoms had, ooh. There were a couple of fun ones. Moon Pie, right? Said this account has been asked to test Twitter's 280 character limit, but as a 100-year-old brand, we believe our fans enjoy traditional tweets with brevity, so we declined. We hope to continue to provide a fun, positive place to discuss moon pies moving forward. Thank you. So they used 280 characters to say we're not going to do that. Denny's said, last night, we received the 280 character count. We traded the extra 140 for beans, not even magic, which I thought was cute. There were a lot of people who used it to say, we're really going to take advantage of this, and then having it cut off in the middle of a word at 280 characters. To me, what differentiates Twitter is the 140 character count. I had a teacher in journalism school teaching News Writing 101 who taught us the 3 T's, and here it is, 45 years later, and it's still seared into my memory. You're supposed to be terse, tight, and telegraphic. And I think Twitter forced people to do that, and longer messages seems to me to be, now it's Facebook.
Yep.
I'm not sure it's going to do anything for them. And another thing is that a lot of people have said, you've got trolls, you've got fake accounts, you've got fake news, you've got bots, and what you chose to do was more characters.
Yes.
Didn't you have other priorities?
Well, it also comes down to, I mean, regardless of what we as marketing professionals say, it's going to be the fans of those brands. And they're the ones who are going to either see what comes out in longer tweets. And you're right, it's micro blogging versus blogging. They're the ones who will block. They're going to discredit or just see it as noise. And the community has to speak. It's almost like when you look at, I always go back to old examples, but when Coke thought they had the data to launch New Coke, there was an uprising. What they do, they brought back classic Coke and they got rid of New Coke. When Reed Hastings realized that with Netflix, the DVD separating DVD from streaming services, oh my goodness, the uproar, bad idea, but it took a while to go back to what made fans happy. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's people saying, this is noise, this is junk, we don't want it, we want our 140 characters. And that might make a difference because it is a strong culture.
Yeah, I can't see people who have avoided getting a Twitter account suddenly going, oh, 280 characters, that'll bring me aboard. I think most people continue to look at it and go, I don't get what this is. And it's not the limited character count that confuses them.
I think Twitter's core brand right now for most folks, if they think about it, gets down to probably two different things. First is Donald Trump. Whether you like him or dislike him, follow him or not, he is using that platform relentlessly and is getting all kinds of attention for it, both in terms of followers and, of course, the media overall. So Trump is using it. And the second thing is real-time, reactions, activity. If we look at today's tragedy with the Vegas shooting, I'm sure if the 3 of us were to jump on Twitter right now, we would be able to get on the ground reports that help contextualize what's happening on the scene. In a much lighter note, most any sports that's broadcast, you can obviously jump on as well and follow. So if Twitter represents those two things, then the question is, would 140 characters being expanded do something different? I don't think it will. It's sort of the gift that nobody wanted, as one reporter said. I think Twitter would be much better to focus on what would actually change this user growth trajectory. And from where I sit, they should start doubling down on what they could do to incent folks around those real-time events to come back to Twitter after the event. So if you get a group of people excited, what can you do on day 7 to get them to come back and continue the dialogue?
And in terms of the breaking news, and frankly, I do see almost all of the breaking news first on Twitter, but I've already seen a BuzzFeed article that has listed all of the fake stories coming out of the Las Vegas shooting.
Yep.
Everything from asserting that the gunman was a member of the Antifa movement, to using pictures of everyone from a comedian to a porn star as images of people who are family members who are supposedly at the concert. Now, I don't know what motivates people to do this, but it does flood Twitter, and it is one of their big problems.
Yeah, I think when you're opening up your tweets to more characters and people are able to add more and there's fake news, Twitter has to step up to the plate and really start more of their own policing. If you're considered a news outlet, and we're all saying it, Twitter is mainstream news, then it's time, because opening it up to more will only lead to more issues. So they have to make sure they're on top of that. And I know that's going to take a lot of work, and it has to be done. It's time.
Yeah. Well, Zuckerberg finally owning some of his responsibility on Facebook would make you think that finally Twitter would get there too.
Absolutely. Especially since Twitter is really the right now medium. It's where things do spread when news breaks.
Right. And I think they were called out for their testimony. I don't remember which congressman said it, but it was disappointing. It was disappointing the way that they came to the table and the way that they answered questions, almost like you should have known. And now what next? You can take steps to fix this. And it's important, especially with 2018 interim election coming up, and of course the big 2020 election. So opening up more information out there, you might be adding to this issue if you don't do the right thing.
Well, I can't tell you how many times we have said this around various types of technologies and issues, but if they don't self-regulate, the government will step in and regulate them. And I'm sure they don't want that, but they don't seem to be moving with any urgency to prevent it either.
Right.
And just to wrap this up, I did like one comment. Alexis Madrigal at The Atlantic didn't think that this was a big deal, writing, "People think Twitter's brand is built around the 140 characters. If you ask me, Twitter's core identity is contained at the @ username." So for what that's worth.
Right.
Only if they actually figure out how to galvanize those kind of everyday Joes. I think that's what she was getting at, is could there be an opportunity, and maybe there is, between what I would kind of call the macro influencers and those micro influencers, and better connect between the two. Twitter does seem to, as a platform, lend itself to potential there, but whether or not that would actually happen is an entirely different story.
Great. We're going to move on to the next story. Companies have jumped on the artificial intelligence bandwagon. They're touting AI in the marketing of their products and services, rather than touting the experience that AI delivers for them. And in an article that was in the rundown, the comparison was made to hybrid cars or electric cars. Nobody touts the technology that makes them work, just the fact that it's going to save you a ton of money on gasoline and you're going to pump fewer emissions into the air. But it seems that there is what the article put in their headline as AI washing going on. Have you seen this?
Definitely. I mean, I think we've all seen this at this point. One of the articles we were talking about for this show said that AI should really stand for artificially inflated, and I liked that a lot. I think that's very apropos. I mean, the bottom line is, it's like this treasure box that nobody quite knows what's inside or how to articulate. Is it like a gold doubloon in there, or is it a diamond tiara? And because nobody can exactly say what it is, nobody, of course, can communicate the benefits or the real lasting value that will come out of it. From where I sit, there are really a kind of a continuum of marketers that are struggling with how to use it in their own marketing programs. And speaking of clients, and also new business pitches that we've been involved in, where people are genuinely struggling with the problem. I know one company that basically has recognized that their prospects are going to have an opportunity and a hurdle around machine learning. They have to understand it, and they have to be able to talk about it in order to keep selling their products. And so that company says, hey, here's a huge opportunity, but that recognition has not led to any kind of new language to talk about it. So it's like looking at a problem that's lying there right on the surface, but everyone continues to assume they can talk the same way and just throw in a buzzword or two and it will happen. And it won't. I mean, on the other end of the continuum, I know another company that is actually touting their AI capabilities to a very prime sector, this sector is already laying claim to using some of the advances associated with AI, but the client in this case is still talking over their head. So their core identity is AI, and yet they're not able to be effective in a real-time conversation or in marketing activity. I think both examples are really about, they've decoded the opportunity and the problem, but they can't yet talk about it. And I do think there's some fixes, but I'm curious if you guys see the same thing.
I think that's so interesting. We're talking about it, but we don't understand it. Users are exposed to it. There's interest, but maybe they don't really know either. And that really does come down to education, because AI is this big umbrella of smart tasks that are being done. And when you get into the machine learning part of it, well, for a brand, if you're using machine learning, then that means the machine is able to capitalize on something in the past, use that knowledge, and move forward. So when I think about brands that are going to win, you think about the ones that they have immediacy for their consumers. They're easily accessible. They give personalization. That's the difference right there, because you can have a chatbot on your site that will get your person to check out and give them the free shipping, versus something that's going to allow personalization and understanding and give choices. So I think we all need to step back and understand that and be able to speak about it intelligently. And then at the end of the day, it is all about authenticity and the experience, and what are some of the guidelines and marketing ethics that we need to know about to help better protect consumers as they're experiencing. That's my overall take.
Yeah, I look at Chris Penn, who was the first PR person I know to start really talking about AI as a tool for the public relations industry. He was at the last I think it was actually the Watson conference before the last one, out of thousands of people there, the only representative of a PR agency. But when he talks about it, he talks about outcomes, right? He talks about being able to look through all of this content and identify issues that would not have been evident if they had sat there and tried to read it. He even talked in one article, I think it was on VentureBeat, where Shift was able to crunch more than 15,000 blogs for a medical client in 1.5 seconds in order to identify insights, trends, and keywords in hopes of identifying the root cause of a situation, but in the process uncovered an entirely different reputation issue that they were able to address. So, if you're a prospective client and they're talking about, we have AI and we can help you better address your issues by surfacing the sentiments and the words that people are using, but also identify issues you didn't even know you had. I mean, that appeals to a client more than we're using predictive learning with these neural networks, just touting the tool rather than what it can do for you, the features rather than the benefits.
Yeah, it's that real experience. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, I was going to agree with that. I mean, I think it's insights and benefits. That's always what you get, and I think the opportunity for anyone who uses it is to have both. Actually, you do see some marketing around benefits, but the insights piece, to me, if anytime I'm talking to someone about this, I say, let's forget AI. Let's talk about your data storytelling opportunity here. If you change that and you say, all right, what do we have at play at that moment in time? There's a whole different opportunity moving forward versus the washing that we were referring to earlier.
Yeah, and I think the marketing also presents some opportunities in a variety of other industries. If you look at, for example, nursing, and Elizabeth, you work in healthcare, there has been some worry about the kinds of jobs that are going to be displaced as a result of AI.
Yep.
But with nursing, the expectation is that the AI is going to do a better job of predicting the appropriate course of treatment for a patient. But the nurse is going to be able to devote more time to the human and judgmental dimensions of nursing. So if you're a hospital that's using this and you have patients going, wait a minute, you got AI going to treat me instead of a nurse, the marketing can really talk about getting the best of both out of the combination of technology and human beings.
I think that's where PR is perfect to tell the story of AI and how we can step up and say, look at that example right there. And you have to have trust, and people have to believe that the machine tending to them is doing the right thing and helping, but that at the same time, people who are going to fear losing their jobs, that story is being told as well, that maybe it's not a substitute for your job, you're shifting and doing something differently. So there's a lot to kind of dive into, because the fears out there when it comes to artificial intelligence, they're real too. I have a client who's rolling out with a study very soon, and I can't do any spoilers, but it really is interesting to know how people feel, consumers feel about artificial intelligence, what they trust, how far they want the machine to go, and what they would do and how they feel in certain situations where the machine could do the thinking for them. So I think there's a lot to dive in, but PR and marketing certainly have a place and can tell an important story and help to educate.
And I think we're going to have to stay on top of this, because the technology is going to advance at a breathtaking pace. Right now, AI can write a song, but not a very good one. It can write a novel, but not a very readable one. It can edit a movie trailer, and it's passable. But in 5 years, the ability to do these things is going to be much greater. I mean, it is writing sports stories for the Associated Press, because those stories are basically just data being told through words. It's the input of the minor league baseball games that there were never enough reporters to go cover before. So no reporters are being displaced by this, but they are able now to produce that copy. But down the road, I think there are real worries about how this is going to displace people in the workplace. But there are also opportunities, more for organizations like Associated Press, where you can get coverage of things that you just didn't have enough boots on the ground to do before.
I kind of think about when social media came around, everybody said PR is dead, right? That's it. That's the end of the PR person. And, maybe we can all attest that, oh my goodness, no, we're so busy. But the point was, we were a little bit behind the 8 ball. We never want to be in that position again, no matter who you are or what you do. And if AI is affecting your industry, we do need to be 10 steps ahead.
Are you thinking of?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask: are you thinking of hiring somebody or a group of people who get this in particular and can bring those skills to the agencies?
I'm not, and at the moment, and it actually is related to some of the other stories we're going to cover in the podcast. So I don't want to spoil myself, but I do think that I'm going to hire today what I always want to hire for, which is the best possible brain with the most curiosity and the most proactivity. So I think, Deirdre, you're right. We always have to be ahead, because otherwise, as an agency, you very quickly become commoditized. So you're really being bought at the end of the day for best brain, biggest thinker ahead. But some of those skills that you're talking about, Shell, they matter more and more. I have worked at this agency a really long time. The profile of who we hire has certainly changed over time. And the idea if someone came with, a great kind of technologist perspective, that person would be warmly embraced. I just wouldn't put that first on my hiring list.
Yeah, one of the stories we chose not to talk about, but was in the hopper, was about the state of data journalism. There's a report out, and most publications now have a data journalist. This is somebody who can dig into numbers and do the math and run the regression analyses and the other kinds of analyses in order to find outlier data that tell a story. I've got to figure that agencies are going to need those skills at some point.
I think they are. Don't forget, though, that you can subcontract out some of that. So I think the fine line is, it's not unlike my choice at the moment, we probably do 15 SEO projects a year, but I still would rather use my preferred partner and have a full-time employee that is able to consult on every aspect of integrated marketing. I think it's kind of the same thing.
I've always said that whoever you're dealing with, especially PR professionals, if you're dealing with journalists, you're mirroring their personalities to understand them, to build relationships. So if you're working with a data journalist, then you have to have that understanding too. So Elizabeth, I'm really glad that you focus on new skills and especially the curiosity, because I find that all of this it's a mindset. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. There are so many opportunities to learn. You don't have to go back for a full degree to dive into data and analytics and data intelligence. It's on social media. It's on the internet. Just take advantage of the educational opportunities.
All right. Elizabeth, you shared this story, and I found it fascinating for a number of reasons. Citibank commissioned a study to examine music's role in its advertising, and now it's using what the article referred to as earworms, like Singing in the Rain in its campaign. And you articulated a bit of a worry about the growing irrelevance of words.
Yes. Are words on the wane? I mean, I hope not, but I think it's entirely possible that reality just got a little step closer there. So by way of background, I'm a bookworm, I'm an English lit major, and I do passionately believe that words are the language of ideas. But what Citibank is tapping into is that arguably, music is the language of emotion in many ways. This is certainly a smart play by Citibank to take advantage of those earworms, those things that we've already been trained, we're, culturally attuned to hear Singing in the Rain and have a feeling of joy and optimism, which the Citibank CMO said is the goal of this campaign, to kind of find those emotive moments of joy along a financial journey. So that's true and laudable. I just think that there's an opportunity that we need to think about here, which is as we step farther and farther in this experience world that we're all living by and that every brand is living by. That's the holy grail, right? How many experiences can you provide in how many different ways? We better not lose what the power of words gives to us. A really simple, humble example, whenever we hire someone or are screening someone that we'd like to hire, they take a writing test. They don't just take a writing test so that we can see if they're good at punctuation and grammar and can line up 5 paragraphs in a row that makes sense. We do it because that's the way you illustrate your ideation process. That's how you zero in on something that matters, that nugget idea. And it also shows, of course, how you might represent a client and somebody that we're working for. For all of those reasons, words are still the best way to screen. I've interviewed plenty of people who did great in an interview, but who weren't so good at that writing test. I just worry that we're losing, as communicators, our devotion to the written word, and I don't think we should do that.
Oh my gosh, I agree. I mean, I love the written word, and I'm going to go to the music part of this in a second. I even get nervous with texting and social media being, too much brevity, and how even younger professionals and students and just younger audiences are shortening their words. And then when they get into the workforce, well, that it takes its toll for you there. But on the note of music, as you said, it does evoke certain emotions. And millennials are especially tied to music, and music means social interaction. It means social change. A lot of their artists are using lyrics to drive social change. So it's natural for brands to connect the music part in their commercials or to connect with artists for different partnerships or events. You see, Live Nation. Mm-hmm. So I do think that when you're appealing to those younger audiences, that's a sweet spot right there where you're going to get attention and those earworms are really going to sink in. And now that's not to say that a Gen Xer or a boomer wouldn't be affected by music, but sometimes I also feel the way that you grew up and your experience, and Elizabeth, clearly your experience, you are about words as well. But it's the younger audience. It's kind of what drives them. And I think that's what Citibank is picking up on.
No question. If you look at, if you had a special camera and looked into my house yesterday, here was the scene. I'm in one room preparing for this podcast, reading the articles, thinking about what I'm going to say. I can hear in the kitchen, though, my 17-year-old with 3 of his friends. And what are they doing? They are asking Alexa to serve up song after song after song. So perfect example to illustrate your point. Like, we're all in this, but, we're doing different things.
I just feel like in this household, when you're angry, the music gets louder. When you're feeling sentimental, the music turns on. When you're having fun with your friends and you want to dance around, there's the music. There's just so much music in the world of these younger audiences, the younger generation.
Yep.
As you raise Alexa, I keep coming back to the notion that it's going to be an audio world. The audio and voice is going to be the interface to everything before too long, between the fact that we have mobile devices where we'd rather talk to it than type into a tiny keyboard, the fact that they're going to be built into cars and built into the Internet of Things where there is no visual interface, all you've got is voice. And in addition to the earworms, you've also got audio branding. I interviewed David Meerman Scott for this show. And, he's created a company called Signature Tones that does sonic logos and music designed to be heard as a logo. And I'm thinking, as organizations are struggling to figure out how they're going to have a presence on the Alexa ecosystem or the Google Home ecosystem, you have to solve problems. The skills have to be things that people ask because they need to figure out how to get a stain out of the carpet, or the Mayo Clinic now has first aid a skill on the Echo, but having a sonic brand, an audio brand that can play, that you go, like the Intel one, right? As soon as you hear that, oh, okay, that's this brand sharing this useful information that I asked for without having to advertise. So I think there's a lot of utility in the music as well.
That's true. And in fact, if you look, I forget, it was now a couple of months ago, but Brand Republic, that blog covered a new agency ecosystem that has sprung up to serve the Amazon family, where they're all about what kind of penetration can we get on Alexa, on Dot, whatever it might be. So David's onto something, and so is that agency. I guess we all need to pay attention to that.
Music and audio is the future.
I do remember being at a conference, though, and I don't remember what the speaker was talking about, but he was denigrating the power of the written word. I think it might have been as opposed to face-to-face. And Don Ranley came out of the room red-faced, and I hadn't been in the room. And I asked him what was wrong, and Don told me what the speaker was saying. And he says, if he thinks that the written word doesn't have any power, he should go ask Thomas Paine.
Or Jane Austen or Alexander Hamilton or a whole host of people that we still, use to measure our lives. Plato, there will always be a rule that says, look backwards. And in order to look backwards, you are able to look forwards. And our backwards is mostly historically been words. So there's a place even from that perspective.
Okay. On to the next one. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Phil Gomes about a paper he wrote on blockchain. And usually when blockchain gets discussed on this show, it's because I throw it in. So I was really surprised to see you added this. It was you, Elizabeth, wasn't it?
I've lost track, but it is a topic that's consuming me at the moment.
What is it about blockchain that's consuming? I was just at a conference covering emerging technologies that communicators should be aware of, and blockchain was the one where only two people in the room raised.
Yeah. And it's probably still two people in the room, and maybe 6 months from now it'll be 8 people in the room. I mean, I think the problem is that not unlike the AI discussion we're having, a lot of people aren't familiar with what it is, and so there's this reflective tendency to compartmentalize it and say, yeah, it's valuable, but we can put it over there. Let's not, break that down any further. The problem is that it's beginning to be an issue for marketing communicators. You have to be able to understand it because it's disrupting so many industries, or about to disrupt so many industries. So I have one former client whose job to this point is to equip accountants to understand and to educate themselves about blockchain. And it's for the reason that you said earlier about the nurses example, Shell. Essentially, most everything, call it 75% of what accountants do, blockchain is going to mechanize. And so their opportunity, just like nurses will get to consult above the wearable devices, accountants have to consult above all those routine activities and be the, the numbers system thinker, as opposed to the tax preparation provider. And that is down to blockchain, and understanding that it isn't so much that there's this technical thing that is really tricky. It's that if you don't understand a disruptive agent like that, you aren't going to be able to be a very good communicator.
Yeah, if you're Price Waterhouse or Ernst & Young and you're not worried about blockchain, I mean, who is going to need a specialist to come in at $350 an hour to audit numbers that are right there in front of you to see?
That's right.
And they're trusted because they're digitally permanent in the blockchain.
Yeah, there's a conference I think it's called Accounting is Big Data. And, it's almost like the title of the conference is wishful thinking, like, come on, guys, we can do this. But they've got a hurdle. Exactly. Pivot like yesterday. So it's a problem. Go ahead, Aunt Deidre.
I was just going to say, I don't want to speculate too much, but I think when it comes to PR professionals and maybe marketers, the thought of hearing blockchain, you automatically think of, it's a first reaction, it's banking or it's financial services. But as you pointed out, yes, it is those industries, but it's also healthcare and the ability to transfer medical data. It's insurance, it's government. So as we see all of these industries opening up, being in public relations myself, I say, oh, okay. So, well, if there's a story to be told, then PR can tell a story. If there's education, which clearly there needs to be, PR can educate, raise awareness. A lot of these new startup companies, what they're doing, we could be there. If there is any issues, and of course we know that when it comes to any type of ledger system and the tokens that are passing over and the possibility of the hacking or the security issues, PR would be there for these industries, listening and responding. And maybe that says, oh, should we be doing some crisis planning around this as well? So that's kind of where I see how we fit in. So when you go to a conference, you would hope to see more and more people populating and listening to the experts who get it. And I just want to add that I interviewed Tiana Lawrence on my show, Women Worldwide, and she is the author of Blockchain for Dummies.
There you go.
Yeah, so
of course there's a blockchain for dummies.
There's a blockchain for dummies. And you know what? It's pretty hardcore. Even reading this book, you have to be more a programmer to understand it, but it did shed a lot of light. So any way that we as marketers can learn more, I think that's really important as we move into this disruption, more disruption.
I think we also need to be looking at how we as communicators use it on behalf of clients. So, for example, if there's a question about whether an organization actually said something when they did, if that record is on the blockchain, you have irrefutable proof that, yes, we did. We acknowledged that. We addressed it before the incident. Another, as we look at becoming a more values-driven marketplace, people want to know the provenance of what they're buying from a company, and blockchain is going to make it possible to have a marker on a product. And if you scan it with your phone, and again, this gets back to touting the benefits versus the features, what you can see is the entire supply chain for that product. And you can see that the cardboard packaging didn't come from the rainforest, and that the food product was ethically raised or what have you. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to think that if this is the issue the client has, blockchain's now in the toolkit as a potential solution.
Yeah, and before we leave the topic, I just have to observe this too. I think what most people think about blockchain is, as we said earlier, they think Bitcoin, but are you guys familiar with this startup Brave and what they're doing? It's worth 2 seconds because it's much closer to home for us as marketers. So Brave is a startup that, according at least to the report that I read, raised $35 million in 30 seconds. And what they basically sell is a cryptocurrency that they call basic attention tokens. And what you do with this cryptocurrency is the aim is to basically disrupt digital advertising. And if you have the tokens, what you do is you pay a micro payment using those tokens to the web publishers that you like. And so what it essentially is it's an attention it's an attention currency. So we are paying for our attention. And obviously there's all kinds of immediate implications then for what publishers do, what brands do, because you have a much more direct kind of line of sight into what is hopefully getting somebody interested, exciting. So Bitcoin might feel far away from some. I wonder if a year from now, if we were all to talk together, I wonder if basic attention tokens would feel so far away, because as marketers, that's really what we're about, trying to get attention.
And we're seeing that in some of the blockchain-based social networks, which work a little bit more like Reddit in that you upvote the stories you like, but by upvoting them, you're paying a micropayment to the person who wrote that article. So rather than just getting likes, you're getting paid. So suddenly, for brands looking to get attention on social networks, if these become more standard, that raises some issues.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to get you out of here by 1, Deirdre.
Thank you.
Will that be our success metric? Just curious.
For me, to make my client happy.
Hey, that's always, that's the #1 metric.
Right.
I was going to say earlier when we were talking about our first technology, the AI, that augmented reality is a technology that everybody has been talking about. Robert Scoble, I mean, he has been all over this, talking about how it's going to change the world. Tim Cook was talking about how 1 billion devices are suddenly going to get this when iOS 11 is out, and they're hardly talking about it at all on Apple's ads. And yet, what we're seeing with the AR apps that have been released is a bunch of crap. Even Robert Scoble came out and said, "I can't believe how bad these are." And I think it's because everybody was too busy talking about AR rather than what you can do with it. And you had a lot of people just jumping on the bandwagon saying, "Hey, we've got AR." Rather,
And how immersive do you really want to be? Last holiday season, my husband was in Best Buy with my boys playing with some AR that basically put them next to a dinosaur. And he came home and he was raving about how fun it was. And so I said to him, do you want this as a gift for you and the kids? And he was like, oh no, I checked the box in Best Buy. I got my 25 minutes and I'm good, and I think that's part of the problem is, even if you enjoy that immersive experience, how often do you really want it? I don't know. It's sort of a question mark.
I have the Google Gear VR headset, and when I use it, it's fun. I mean, there's no denying that there's some cool things to do with it, but I never find myself saying, gee, I want to take a 10-minute break. I think I'll put the headset on, Yeah. I just don't.
Right.
The IKEA app is an example of what you can do with this, right? Because you can pull up the product they have and go to the part of the room where you're thinking of putting it and see how that chair looks right there. That's practical. You can tell people this is a benefit of using this app.
I wonder if it's because it's not a natural part of our worlds yet. Just like how you said, where sure, you go to Best Buy and you check it out and you check the box, because we naturally wouldn't gravitate to that. It hasn't penetrated our everyday lives, Shell, where you wouldn't choose to do that with your 10 free minutes. But maybe at some point it would be. Who knows?
Are we too old? To your point from earlier, Deirdre, so maybe. My kid is fine with the Amazon, with Alexa serving up the music. Mm-hmm. Is it just that we don't want to put on the headphones? We'd rather move on, but maybe my 15-year-old would be okay.
Maybe.
All right, let's get to the last story here. Sorry to digress.
I couldn't tell if we were taping or not.
Oh, it's taping.
That was just so interesting.
I may pull that out and put it at the end of the AI discussion.
Well, that was a good discussion too.
Moving to our last story. Everywhere you look, people are talking about how important it is to shift to video. The Columbia Journalism Review is suggesting we put the brakes on that. Data from ComScore in this article found that publishers that pivoted to video this summer have seen at least a 60% drop in their traffic in August compared to the same period a year ago. Elizabeth, let's hear it for words, right? What they said is that publishers have to acknowledge that the pivot has failed, find out why, and fix it, so that what they focus on is good video, not just video. And they listed 4 reasons for the failure of video: faulty metrics for measuring the audience, trusting third-party platforms like Facebook to do the hard work of distribution, low-quality video production with weak technological support for video content, and a failure to turn video views into some sort of action, whether it's high readership or sales or what have you. There's also a lot of weakness in what attracts people to video. Once they get there, they have to wait for the video to load. They have to suffer through these awful pre-rolls. Are you sold on the value of video? Have you recommended this pivot to anybody? Is it working for you? How are you using video for your clients?
Well, I'll jump in. So we are finding video is valuable, but it always comes down to, so if there are all these issues, did everybody just jump on a bandwagon? You could look at it this way: without actually auditing a little bit, testing video to see how well it's doing. You pointed out faulty metrics, the trust, it's too costly. You kind of have to have a strategy in place. I mean, we're marketers here. So I think the article pointed out that, where does video fit into your digital marketing strategy? And are you asking the right questions? Because when you look at the outcome and the lack of all the things you're not getting, then you should be going back to say, okay, does video support our messages? Is it actually getting us to the goals that we want to achieve? And based on what the Columbia Review article says, no, it's not. But most of all, consumers, are they appreciating the video? And what kind of video gets them excited? What works? I'm a full believer. Maybe we shouldn't be jumping on a bandwagon and putting all of our eggs in one basket. I do believe in the peso model, where it's a mix of media, and that's really important. But it's always knowing what people want. and audit it.
Ginny Dietrich's ears just perked up.
I know.
Paid, earned, social, and owned,
Yes.
or shared and owned.
Yep, one we use every day ourselves. I mean, you know, so I couldn't be in more agreement. This is why I love you, Deirdre, because I think that you and I are in sync on a lot of things. But it gets down to, first of all, a strategy that reflects narrative intent. And then you can say, all right, what are the best ways to realize that narrative strategy? And video could be one of the formats. And by the way, video means about a bazillion different things these days. So is it animation? Is it a whiteboard? Is it talking head? Is it those highly popular Facebook videos that are shot on the phone where someone just keeps dropping placards that have like 2 or 3 words? I myself have watched way more of those than I should have. But there are all these different formats with all these different costs associated. And then the other piece, the third piece of that, or let's call it the third leg of the stool, is testing, right? So nobody should be putting money against any tactic, including video, without doing some smart A/B testing along the way to see what the audience is actually moved by. I have one multinational client who, when we started working with them, routinely spent something like $100,000 on every video they did. That was just the standard. And when we tried to argue against that standard to say, you guys, I'm not sure this is money well spent, they fought us on it. They wanted their standard, their way, with those costs. And it's only now, you know, well over 5 years later, that they are open to it. It took that long to pivot on video. I just, like anything, I guess we fall in love with certain tactics and the way we think those tactics should be, but it just doesn't matter what we think. It's what the people we want to sell to think, and it's easy to forget.
Elizabeth, it is so refreshing to hear that your agency fought the client so that they wouldn't spend $100,000 per video. I am so for the test, the pilot, before you move forward. I mean, that is the best place to be. Of course, you can only bring that recommendation, and there's always pushback. But that does beg the question about, hey, step back. What are your resources? What's realistic? And this has to be quality over quantity.
The other side of the coin is that somebody's going to read this ComScore data and says, that's it, we're done with video. When I would never counsel somebody to not have a product video to put up on Amazon or the other e-commerce sites, because we know that having a video boosts the sale of a product. You look at Now This News, which is just video. They don't have a website. Their website is essentially their job site. Everything else is distributed through those third parties that were denigrated in the Columbia Journalism Review piece. But nevertheless, you see now this piece, it's because it's scrolled by somebody shared it on Facebook or on Twitter. And they're doing quite well. I also know that YouTube is trying to push the idea of a 2-second or a 3-second ad for pre-rolls, which would certainly ease up that issue. So this is all an evolving thing, but yeah, putting all your eggs in one basket, firing your writers and saying all we're going to do now is video seems to me to be an ill-informed and non-strategic solution.
Well, and it would be real good too if journalism grads were better equipped for the new reality. Part of the reason that there's such a struggle around video is people haven't been trained how to use it very well. One of my favorite blogs, maybe even my favorite blog, dare I say it, is Neiman Journalism Lab's blog. It's such a good blog. And if you are a PR professional and you're listening to this, don't think, oh, that's not for me because I'm in PR. Think, this is really for me because I'm in PR. Because if you know what journalism is doing and how it's shifting and evolving, you have a lot better chance of doing your own job successfully. But at any rate, Neiman has constant articles streaming on how reporters should, take up better video editing or, community management and the like. There's a lot that we need to train those young peeps how to do out of school if they want to keep journalism alive. And there's some cautionary tales involved in training or not training these days.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in the younger generation, the millennial, and even let's talk about Gen Z now.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different news outlets with digital content that are completely geared toward iGen or Gen Z. And I'm interviewing somebody on my show coming up from Awareness TV. And basically what they're doing is they're realizing that if they want to reach Gen Z, that content has to be 10 minutes or less. It is clearly video content. It's all snackable. But catering to this generation means shorter, means video. And it also means having a very interesting mix of what this executive producer was saying, your pop culture stories and kind of like that gossipy stuff balanced out by, we've got some scientific stuff, but it fits the format that they like. Yeah. So, here we go again. It's all video, eggs in one basket. Is this the younger generation?
And even there, are they putting those videos up on YouTube when the audience wants to see them on Snapchat?
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Deirdre, I know that you would prefer to stay and chat for another hour on all this stuff, but as I've often noted, this consulting life would be great if it weren't for those pesky clients. So we'll wrap up. I want to let everyone know that next week, Cami Hoysa will be a guest co-host, as will Lee Oden. Looking forward to having both of them back on the show. I want to give you, Deirdre and Elizabeth, a chance to pitch whatever you'd like to pitch and let people know where to find you online. So, Deirdre, since you have to motor on out, why don't you go first?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to pitch. So I have a new book coming out. I believe it will be shipped this week.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. Answers for Modern Communicators. So this is my 6th book. It's a little bit different than all of my other books, where it's in a Q&A format, and I am sharing experiences over what is soon to be a 30-year career in 2018 in PR and marketing. And I've also asked other marketers to come in and to give guiding principles as well. And also, my podcast, Women Worldwide, is now on the C-Suite Radio Network. So that's a new place where we're being distributed, and we're really excited about that.
Excellent. And how can people find you online?
Yes, at Dee Breckenridge. I am always on Twitter. And you can find me at DeirdreBreckenridge.com, which is my author's blog, or my company blog is pureperformancecom with 2Ms.com. Thanks.
And Elizabeth?
Let's see. You can find me on our firm's website, blissintegrated.com, and lots of ways to get our ideas to you. We're obsessed with all things coffee, so all of our thinking properties are connected to coffee. So our blog, there you go. Our blog is called The Blend. Our podcast is called Fresh Brewed News, and we tackle on a weekly basis one hot button topic that's in the news, things like Equifax recently. And then my own vlog, which I started not so long ago, which is called Espresso Shots. And that is about 60 to 90 second. Geez, I did the same thing in the NASDAQ interview. Do you remember that, Deirdre? It's like I want to keep talking, but the whole point of the vlog is to say it simply. So anyway, maybe we need to edit that, Shell, but it's a 60 to 90 second vlog, integrated marketing tips. So that's me. And you can find me at Elizabeth Sosno on Twitter and in various different platforms.
And I hope you had enough fun, Elizabeth, that you will consider coming back on the show again sometime in the future.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And Deirdre, so you can get out, I will record the how to comment separately. So let me stop the recording.